Welcome to Raw Tales Africa. Please like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. It keeps the storytelling fire burning. Now, let's get into today's tale. Brace yourself. The rain pounded against the marble steps of the Lagos Continental Hotel as Emeka stood frozen, his expensive suit soaked through, staring up at the penthouse suite where warm golden light spilled through floor-to-ceiling windows. His trembling hands clutched a crumpled invitation, one that should have been his ticket to paradise, but instead had become his sentence to hell. Inside that penthouse, the woman he had abandoned 8 months ago, the woman he had called worthless, the woman he had left crying and 6 months pregnant, was being celebrated as the newly revealed heiress to the Oku pharmaceutical empire. $3 billion. $3 billion. And he had walked away from it all for a woman who turned out to be nothing more than a gold digger with fake designer bags and a rental car. Emeka's phone buzzed with a message from his current girlfriend, Victoria. Where are you? The rent is due tomorrow and you promised to handle it. He wanted to laugh, but the sound that came out was more like a sob. The irony was suffocating. He had left a billionaire for a woman who couldn't even pay her own rent. Security guards were already approaching him, their faces stern as they recognized the man who had been making headlines for the wrong reasons. Sir, you need to leave the premises, one of them said firmly. But Emeka couldn't move. His eyes remained fixed on the silhouette in the window. Chioma, his ex-wife, the mother of his child, surrounded by businessmen and dignitaries who were probably worth more than entire countries. She looked radiant, powerful, untouchable, everything he had thrown away. Please, he whispered to the security guard. I just need to see her. I need to explain. Sir, Mrs. Oku had made it very clear. You are not welcome here. Mrs. Oku. The name hit him like a physical blow. She had taken back her maiden name, erasing him from her identity completely. And why wouldn't she? He had erased her from his life when he thought she was nothing. But this story didn't start with Emeka standing in the rain, drowning in regrets. This story started 8 months earlier, when love was just another word for transaction and loyalty was something you could sell to the highest bidder. 8 months earlier, the sun was setting over their modest two-bedroom apartment in Surulere, casting long shadows across the worn furniture that Chioma had somehow made feel like home. She hummed softly as she folded Emeka's shirt, her movements careful and precise, despite the growing curve of her 6 months pregnant belly. Emeka watched her from the doorway, his phone buzzing with messages he kept declining. Victoria's name flashed on the screen repeatedly, but he shoved the device into his pockets. Not yet. He wasn't ready for that conversation yet. The baby was very active today, Chioma said without looking up, one hand moving to her stomach. I think he's going to be a footballer like his daddy wanted to be. Emeka forced a smile. Or she could be a dancer like her mama. Chioma finally looked at him, her eyes bright with the kind of joy that had once made his heart skip beats. Now, it just made him feel guilty. I went to the clinic today for the ultrasound. Dr. Adebayo says everything looks perfect. The baby is healthy, growing well. That's good, he said, but his voice sounded hollow, even to his own ears. She set down the shirt she was folding and walked over to him, her hand finding his arm. Emeka, what's wrong? You've been distant for weeks now. Is it work? Is it the baby? Are you scared about becoming a father? The truth sat heavy in his chest like swallowed glass. Victoria had been calling him for 3 months now, ever since they met at that business networking event. Victoria, with her designer dresses and luxury car, who spoke casually about vacations to Dubai and shopping trips to London. Victoria, who made him feel like he could be someone important, someone worthy of the finer things in life. "I'm fine," he lied, kissing Chioma's forehead. "Just tired from work." But he wasn't fine. For 3 months, he had been living a double life, meeting Victoria at expensive restaurants he couldn't afford, pretending to be someone he wasn't, all while coming home to Chioma and their simple life that suddenly felt suffocating. Chioma worked as a primary school teacher, earning barely enough to contribute to their household expenses. She wore the same 3 dresses to work, rotated her shoes to make them last longer, and spent her weekends washing their clothes by hand to save money on the laundromat. She was everything good and pure in the world, and Emeka was starting to resent her for it. Because Victoria lived in a penthouse in Victoria Island. Victoria drove a Range Rover and carried handbags that cost more than Chioma made in 6 months. Victoria represented everything Emeka thought he wanted, everything he thought he deserved. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a photo from Victoria, herself in a bikini on a yacht, with the caption, "Wish you were here, baby. When are you going to leave the situation and come be with me properly?" That situation. That's what Victoria called his marriage. Not his wife, not his relationship, not even his problem. Just that situation. Chioma was making dinner in their tiny kitchen, singing a Yoruba lullaby to her unborn child. The domesticity of the scene, which once filled him with contentment, now felt like a prison. This was his life: cramped apartments, second-hand furniture, counting naira before every purchase. Meanwhile, Victoria was offering him a world where money was never a concern, where status and luxury were just parts of daily existence. That night, as Chioma slept peacefully beside him, her hand resting on her belly, Emeka made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He was going to tell her the truth. He was going to break her heart to save his own. The conversation happened on a Sunday morning, right after church. Chioma was glowing in her maternity dress, a simple yellow cotton that she had sewn herself, her hair wrapped in a colorful head tie that matched her radiant smile. She was talking excitedly about the baby shower that church sisters wanted to throw for her, her hands animated as she described the plans. Sister Ngozi says she wants to make the cake herself, and Sister Duni is going to handle the decorations. They are so excited about the baby, Emeka. Everyone is. They were walking slowly because of her condition. Chioma's hand linked through his arm for support. Other couples from church greeted them warmly, many stopping to ask about the pregnancy, to touch her belly and offer blessings for the coming child. Emeka smiled and nodded at all the right moments, but inside, his resolve was hardening. This life felt too small now. These people, with their modest dreams and simple joys, felt limiting. Victoria had opened his eyes to a different world, and he couldn't close them again. When they got home, Chioma immediately went to the kitchen to prepare Sunday rice. Jollof with chicken, their weekly splurge. She hummed as she walked, occasionally calling out to him about church gossip or asking his opinion on baby names. "I was thinking if it's a boy, we could name him after your father," she said from the kitchen. "Chigozie Emeka Jr. What do you think?" Emeka sat on their worn sofa, staring at his phone where Victoria had sent him pictures from her weekend spa retreats. The contrast was jarring. his pregnant wife in their tiny kitchen, cooking rice on a gas burner while Victoria lounged in luxury, getting massages that cost more than their monthly rent. "Chioma," he called out, his voice steady despite the chaos in his chest. "Yes, honey, we need to talk." Something in his tone must have alarmed her because she immediately turned off the stove and came to sit beside him, concern written across her features. "What is it? Is everything okay?" Emeka looked at her, really looked at her. Her face was fuller now because of the pregnancy, glowing with health and happiness. Her eyes held so much trust, so much love, so much belief in their future together. She deserved better than what he was about to do to her. But he did it anyway. "I can't do this anymore," he said quietly. "Do what?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "This, us, the marriage, the baby. I can't do it." The silence that followed was deafening. Chioma blinked several times, as if trying to process words that made no sense. "I don't understand. What are you saying?" "I am saying I want out. I am not ready to be a father. I am not ready for this responsibility." Tears started forming in her eyes, but she shook her head firmly. "No, no, Emeka, you don't mean that. You are just scared. Every man gets scared before his first child is born. It is normal. We can walk through this." "It is not fear, Chioma. It is reality. Look around us." He gestured at their small apartment. "This is all we have. This is all we'll ever have. I want more than this." "More than what?" "More than us. More than our child." Yes, the word came out harsher than he intended, and he saw her physically recoil as if he had slapped her. Her hands instinctively went to her belly, protective and desperate. "Emeka, please. The baby is due in 3 months. You can't leave us now. You can't." "I can and I am. Is there someone else?" The question came out broken, fractured by the tears she was trying so hard to hold back. Emeka could have lied. He could have spared her that additional pain, but he was already destroying her life. What was one more wound? Yes, the sound that came from Chioma's throat was inhuman. Part sob, part wail, part dying breath. She doubled over, clutching her stomach, and for a terrifying moment, Emeka thought he had sent her into premature labor. "Who?" she gasped when she could speak again. "Her name is Victoria. I met her at work." "How long?" 3 months. 3 months. The same 3 months when Chioma had been excited about feeling the baby's first kicks, when she had started shopping for baby clothes at second-hand markets, when she had been planning their future with such innocent joy. Does she know about us? About the baby? Yes. And she doesn't care? Emeka's silence was answer enough. Chioma stood up slowly, her movements careful and deliberate. She walked to their bedroom and came back with a framed photo from their wedding day. The two of them smiling broadly, surrounded by friends and family, looking so young and hopeful and naive. She stared at it for a long moment, then set it face down on the coffee table. "Get out," she said quietly. "Chioma, get out." The scream seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her, primal and raw. "Get out of my house. Get out of my life. Get out." Neighbors started banging on the walls, concerned by their shouting. Someone was knocking on their door, asking if everything was okay. Emeka grabbed his already packed suitcase from their bedroom. Yes, he had been that calculating, and headed for the door. As his hand touched the handle, he turned back to look at her one more time. Chioma was sitting on the floor now, the wedding photo in her lap, her whole body shaking with sobs. Her hand was on her belly, talking to her unborn child in whispered apologies. "I'm sorry," Emeka said, though he wasn't sure he meant it. She didn't look up. "Don't ever come back. Don't call me. Don't ask about the baby. You are dead to us." And with that, Emeka walked out of his marriage, his family, and his old life into Victoria's arms and the promise of something better. He had no idea he was walking away from $3 billion. Victoria's penthouse apartment in Victoria Island was everything Emeka had dreamed of and more. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the Lagos Lagoon. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and every piece of furniture looked like it belonged in a magazine. The bathroom alone was larger than the entire apartment he had shared with Chioma. "Welcome to your new life, baby," Victoria poured as she poured champagne into glasses that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Emeka stood on the balcony, breathing in the salt air and feeling like he had finally arrived. Below him, the city sprawled out in all directions, millions of people struggling to make ends meet while he was up here, literally above it all. "You made the right choice," Victoria said, sliding her arms around him from behind. "That woman was holding you back. A primary school teacher," she laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "What could she possibly offer a man like you? A man like him?" Victoria made him feel important, powerful, worthy of luxury and respect. She introduced him to her friends as "my boyfriend, the businessman," even though his job as a mid-level marketing coordinator hardly qualified as running a business. But in Victoria's world, perception was reality, and she was helping him craft a new perception of himself. The first few weeks were intoxicating. They ate at the finest restaurants in Lagos, danced at exclusive clubs where bottles of champagne cost more than Emeka used to make in a month. Victoria bought him new clothes, designer suits, Italian shoes, Swiss watches, transforming him from the outside in. "You clean up nice," she said as she adjusted his tie before one of our social events. "No one would ever guess you came from, well, where you came from." Emeka pushed down the small voice in his head that whispered about Chioma. He wondered if she had had the baby yet, if everything had gone well, if she was managing on her own. But then, Victoria would kiss him or introduce him to someone important, and those thoughts would fade into background noise. At Victoria's parties, he met Lagos elites, oil executives, politicians, socialites who spoke casually about their houses in London and their children in American universities. They accepted him because Victoria endorsed him, though he sometimes caught them exchanging glances when they thought he wasn't looking. "So, what business are you in exactly?" asked Chief Adebayo, a round man with 3 phones and a gold watch thick as a man's wrist. Emeka felt his throat tighten. "Marketing, business development." "Wow, good field, very dynamic. Which company?" "I'm between opportunities at the moment, exploring some ventures." It was a polite way of saying he had quit his job to live off Victoria's generosity. She had insisted on it, claiming that her social calendar was too demanding for him to maintain regular employment. "I need you available," she had said, Besides, I have enough money for both of us. But as the weeks turned into months, Emeka began to notice things. Victoria's business seemed to consist entirely of spending money, not making it. When he asked about her work, her source of income, she was always vague. Daddy set me up well, she would say with a wave of her manicured hand. Family money, investments, boring stuff. She was generous with her money, but also controlling with it. Every expense had to be approved by her. Every outing was at her discretion. When Emeka suggested they have a quiet night in, she accused him of being boring. When he mentioned wanting to visit old friends, she questioned why he would want to associate with those people. You are different now, she told him one evening as they prepared for another party. You are better than your old life. Don't let them drag you back down. The parties were always the same faces, the same conversations about money and status, and who was sleeping with whom. Emeka found himself smiling and nodding while feeling increasingly empty inside. These people were wealthy, powerful, connected, but none of them seemed particularly happy. Their laughter was too loud, their smiles too practiced, their friendships too transactional. One evening, while Victoria was getting ready for another social gathering, Emeka's phone rang. The caller ID said Surulere General Hospital. His blood ran cold. Chioma, hello? Is this Emeka Okafor? A woman's voice asked. Yes. Sir, I am calling from Surulere General Hospital. Your wife, Mrs. Chioma Okafor, had been admitted. She is in labor, but there are complications. We need you to come immediately. Emeka's hand started shaking. What kind of complications? Sir, please just come as quickly as possible. She's asking for you. Victoria emerged from the bedroom in a stunning red dress, adjusting her diamond earrings. Who was that? I have to go. Go where? We have Chief William's yacht party tonight. I've been talking about this for weeks. It's Chioma. She's in the hospital. She's having the baby. Victoria's face hardened. So? She's having complications. She needs me. She's not your responsibility anymore, Emeka. You made that choice. We made that choice. She is carrying my child. A child you didn't want. A child you walked away from, or have you forgotten? Emeka stared at her, seeing clearly for the first time in months. This woman he had left his family for, this woman he had thought was his salvation, was looking at him with cold calculation as his ex-wife and unborn child faced a medical emergency. I have to go, he said again, reaching for his keys. Victoria stepped in front of him, her voice turning sharp and manipulative. If you walk out that door to go to her, don't bother coming back. I won't be second choice to some village girl and a bastard child. The words hit Emeka like a physical blow. Village girl, bastard child. Is this how Victoria really saw Chioma and his baby? For a moment, he wavered. Going to the hospital meant admitting he still cared, meant facing the consequences of his abandonment. Staying meant maintaining his new life, his new identity, his new world. He chose to stay. He turned off his phone and went to the party. That night, while Emeka sipped champagne on a yacht and made small talk with Lagos socialites, Chioma delivered their daughter alone. She nearly died from complications, spent 3 days in intensive care, and emerged from the hospital with empty arms and an empty bank account. owing money she didn't have for medical bills she couldn't afford. Emeka didn't find out about any of this until weeks later, and by then, he had convinced himself it was too late to fix anything. The guilt sat in his stomach like poison, but Victoria's lifestyle was intoxicating enough to keep him numb. He had made his choice, he had to live with it. What he didn't know was that while he was playing dress up in Victoria's world, Chioma was about to inherit something that would make Victoria's wealth look like pocket change. The first sign that Victoria's world wasn't as golden as it appeared came on a Tuesday morning when Emeka overheard her screaming at someone over the phone. "What do you mean the account is frozen? That is impossible. Daddy wouldn't do that to me." Emeka emerged from the bathroom to find Victoria pacing frantically, her perfectly styled hair disheveled from running her hands through it. "Who were you talking to?" he asked. "Nobody. Just some banking issue. Nothing to worry about." But there was worry written all over her face, and for the first time since he had moved in, Victoria looked vulnerable, almost fragile. The next few days brought subtle changes. Victoria was more irritable, more possessive, more demanding of his attention. She insisted they stay in more often, claiming she wanted intimate time together. But Emeka suspected it was because she couldn't afford their usual expensive outings. When he suggested they grab dinner at their favorite spot, a restaurant where the wine list alone cost more than most people's monthly rent, Victoria quickly redirected. "Let's order in tonight," she said. "I am tired of being around all those people. Don't you want to just be alone with me?" But her smile didn't reach her eyes, and Emeka was starting to recognize the difference between Victoria's genuine expressions and her performed ones. A week later, a man in an expensive suit showed up at the apartment. Victoria met him at the door and stepped outside to talk. But Emeka could hear raised voices through the thin walls. "Miss Victoria, your father has been very patient, but the time for games is over. I just need a little more time. The inheritance will come through soon. Your father specifically said no more advances. You have already burned through your monthly allowance and then some. But what about the penthouse, the car? I have commitments. That is not his problem anymore. He is cutting you off, Miss Victoria, completely." When Victoria came back inside, her face was pale beneath her makeup. "Everything okay?" Emeka asked. "Fine, just fine." But her voice cracked on the second fine. That night, Victoria clung to him with desperate intensity, whispering promises about their future together, about trips they would take and things they would buy. But her promises felt hollow now, like someone trying to convince herself as much as him. The next morning, Emeka woke up alone. Victoria was sitting on the balcony in her silk robe, staring out at the lagoon with an expression he had never seen before. Genuine fear. "Victoria, what's going on, really?" She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and defeated. My father cut me off." "What does that mean exactly?" "It means," she laughed, but it sounded more like crying. "It means everything you see here. The apartment, the car, the clothes, the lifestyle. It all belongs to him and he is taking it back." Emeka felt the ground shift beneath him. "But I thought you had your own money, family investments." Victoria looked at him with something that might have been pity. Baby, I'm 28 years old and I've never worked a day in my life. I don't have investments. I don't have savings. I don't have anything except what daddy gives me. And now he's not giving me anything. The penthouse suddenly felt different. Less like a palace and more like a museum filled with things that were never really theirs. Emeka walked through the rooms with new eyes, seeing rental furniture and borrowed luxury, a lifestyle built on someone else's money and patience. Why did he cut you off? Victoria's face hardened again, some of her old attitude returning. Because he is trying to teach me a lesson. He thinks I am irresponsible with money. Are you? That's not the point, she snapped. The point is, he can't just leave me with nothing. But apparently he could. Over the next few days, Victoria's father's lawyer began the process of reclaiming his property. The car was repossessed first, towed away while Victoria screamed at the driver about making a mistake. Then came the furniture, piece by piece, until the penthouse looked like an empty shell. Victoria's friends stopped calling. Invitations dried up. The social media posts that had once shown her living her best life became sporadic, then stopped altogether. Where will we go? Emeka asked as they sat in the now empty living room, their voices echoing off bare walls. We'll figure something out, Victoria said, but her confidence was gone. I have friends, people who owe me favors, but those friends were nowhere to be found when Victoria needed them. Phone calls went unreturned. Messages were ignored. The people who had once surrounded her at parties, who had laughed at her jokes and complimented her outfit, disappeared like smoke when her money did. Emeka found himself thinking about Chioma more and more. While his world was collapsing, she was somewhere in Lagos, probably struggling to make ends meet as a single mother. But at least she was real. Her poverty was honest. Her struggles were genuine. She didn't pretend to be something she wasn't. Victoria, meanwhile, was becoming someone Emeka didn't recognize. Desperate and grasping, she started making phone calls to men from her past, her voice taking on a sultry tone that made Emeka's skin crawl. Marcus, darling, how are you? I was just thinking about you. Listen, I'm going through a rough patch right now. She was shopping for a new benefactor, someone else to fund her lifestyle, and Emeka realized with crystal clarity that he was just another accessory to her, no more permanent or meaningful than the designer handbags or expensive shoes. One evening, as they ate instant noodles in their empty apartment, Victoria looked at him with calculating eyes. You know, you could get a job. Help us get back on our feet. I can try, but it won't be enough to maintain the lifestyle we've been living. Then, maybe it's time to think about other options. Like what? Victoria was quiet for a moment, then said something that chilled Emeka to his bones. Your ex-wife, the teacher, she must have gotten some kind of settlement when you left. Child support, alimony, something. Maybe it's time to reconnect. Emeka stared at her. You want me to go back to Chioma for money? I'm saying maybe you were too hasty in cutting all ties. Maybe there is still something there you could leverage. The word leverage hung in the air like a curse. Victoria was suggesting he manipulate the woman he had abandoned, the mother of his child, for financial gain. I can't do that. You can't or you won't. Both. Victoria's mask slipped completely then, revealing something ugly underneath. Fine, then you are useless to me. And just like that, 8 months of playing house in paradise came to an end. Victoria kicked him out the next morning. Her parting was delivered with vicious precision. Good luck explaining to your next girlfriend why you are a broke, unemployed deadbeat who abandoned his pregnant wife. I am sure that will work out great for you. As Emeka stood in the street with his suitcase, watching Victoria's building recede behind him, he realized he had lost everything: his wife, his child, his home, his dignity, and his purpose. He was 32 years old and had nothing to show for his life except a closet full of expensive clothes he could no longer afford to maintain. But the real tragedy was yet to come, because while Emeka was learning what it meant to have nothing, Chioma was about to discover she had everything. Emeka's fall from grace was swift and brutal. Within 2 weeks of Victoria kicking him out, he was staying in a single room in Mushi, sharing a bathroom with 6 other tenants and wondering how his life had gone so wrong so quickly. His designer clothes looked ridiculous in the cramped space, and he couldn't afford to get them cleaned properly anymore. The Italian shoes that once made him feel important now had holes in them that he tried to hide with black markers. The Swiss watch Victoria had bought him was the first thing he sold, though it turned out to be a very convincing fake worth less than he spent on lunch during his rich days. He tried to find work, but months of unemployment had created a gap in his resume that was hard to explain. His old job had been filled, his old connections had moved on, and worst of all, word had gotten around about why he left his previous position and his personal life, making him a risky hire for any respectable company. I am sorry, Mr. Okafor, said the HR manager at his 15th job interview in 2 weeks. Your qualifications are adequate, but we've heard some concerning things about your character. We're looking for someone who demonstrates loyalty and commitment, both professionally and personally. News traveled fast in Lagos professional circles. Everyone knew he was the man who had abandoned his pregnant wife for a sugar baby, then being kicked to the curb when the money ran out. In a society that still valued family and tradition, Emeka had become a cautionary tale. His family was no help either. His mother, a devout Catholic who had adored Chioma, refused to speak to him. His brothers were embarrassed by his actions and wanted nothing to do with his drama. Even his friends from university had distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with someone so publicly disgraced. Alone and desperate, Emeka found himself walking past places that reminded him of his old life with Chioma, the church they used to attend together, the markets where she bought vegetables, the clinic where she had her prenatal appointments. Each memory was a knife twist of regret and self-recrimination. He had no idea where Chioma was living now or how she and the baby were doing. His pride and shame prevented him from reaching out, even as his curiosity ate at him. Was the baby healthy? Was it a boy or a girl? Did the child look like him? One afternoon, as he sat in a beer parlor nursing a single bottle he couldn't afford, his phone rang. The number was unknown, but he answered anyway. Any call might be a job opportunity. Is this Emeka Okafor? Yes. This is Barrister Adeyemi from Adeyemi Okoro and Associates. I represent Mrs. Chioma Oku. I'm calling to inform you that divorce proceedings have been initiated. Oku. She had gone back to her maiden name. Okay. Mrs. Oku is seeking a complete dissolution of the marriage with no alimony, no shared property, and no custody arrangement for the minor child. She wants no ongoing connection to you whatsoever. Do you have legal representation? Emeka almost laughed. Legal representation? He could barely afford his rent. No, I don't. Then, I suggest you acquire some. The papers will be served to your address of record within 48 hours. The line went dead. Emeka stared at his phone, processing the information. Chioma was divorcing him, not just separating, but completely severing all legal ties. She wanted nothing from him, which somehow ought more than if she had been demanding money or property. She was erasing him from her life so thoroughly that even their legal connection would be dissolved. But there was something else that nagged at him. The lawyer had referred to her as Mrs. Chioma Oku, not Miss, and he had mentioned her address, which apparently wasn't the old apartment in Surulere where they used to live. That evening, driven by morbid curiosity and desperate loneliness, Emeka took a bus to Surulere. He found their old apartment building and knocked on their former door. A middle-aged man answered, looking at him suspiciously. "I'm looking for Chioma," Emeka said. "She used to live here." "She moved out months ago," the man replied. "Right after she had that baby. Poor girl, all alone with a newborn. Do you know where she went?" The man's expression hardened as he seemed to recognize Emeka. "You are the husband who left her when she was pregnant?" Emeka's silence was answer enough. "You have some nerve coming around here asking about her. That woman nearly died having that baby, you know. Spent days in the hospital. Couldn't afford proper care because you left her with nothing." Each word was a blow to Emeka's already shattered conscience. "She is better off without you," the man continued. "And from what I hear, she is doing just fine now. Better than fine, actually." "What do you mean?" But the man had already slammed the door in his face. Better than fine. What did that mean? Emeka spent the next few days trying to track down information about Chioma. He called the school where she used to teach, but they said she had resigned months ago. He asked around the neighborhood, but people either didn't know where she had gone to or refused to tell him. It was Chioma's friend, Aduni, who finally gave him the first real clue, though not intentionally. Emeka had cornered her at the market, desperate for any information about his ex-wife and child. "Please, Aduni, I just want to know if they are okay, if the baby is healthy." Aduni looked at him with undisguised disgust. "Now you want to know? Where was this concern when she was bleeding on a hospital bed, calling your name?" "I made a mistake. I know that now." "A mistake?" Aduni's voice rose, attracting attention from other shoppers. "A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. A mistake is missing an appointment. What you did was cruel, deliberate, and unforgivable. Please, I am not asking to see them. I just want to know they are safe." Aduni studied his face for a long moment, then seemed to make a decision. "They are more than safe," she said finally. "Chioma is living better than she ever did with you. That baby girl is going to want for nothing." "Baby girl? Beautiful little thing. Looks just like her mama. Thank God nothing like you." Before Emeka could ask more questions, Aduni walked away, but not before dropping one more piece of information that would change everything. "You know what's funny?" She called back over her shoulder. "All this time you thought you were trading up for a rich woman. Turns out you were already married to one." Aduni's words haunted Emeka for days. What did she mean? He was already married to a rich woman. Chioma was a primary school teacher from a modest family. Her father was a retired civil servant. Her mother sold provisions at the local market. There was no wealth there, no hidden fortune. Or was there? Emeka's desperation drove him to do something he never thought he would. He hired a private investigator. Well, hired was generous. He promised to pay Kunle, a former classmate who now worked as a PI, once he got back on his feet. I need you to find out everything you can about my ex-wife, Chioma Oku, Emeka said as they sat in Kunle's crammed office in Ikeja. The woman you left when she was pregnant? Kunle asked bluntly. Bro, what's wrong with you? Just, can you help me or not? Kunle studied him for a long moment, then shrugged. Your money, though I'm not sure why you want to reopen this wound. It took Kunle exactly 3 days to uncover the truth that would destroy what was left of Emeka's sanity. Sit down, Kunle said when Emeka came to his office for the report. You are going to need to sit down for this. Just tell me, your ex-wife, Chioma Oku, is the daughter of Chief Emeka Oku. The name hit Emeka like lightning. Everyone in Nigeria knew Chief Emeka Oku, pharmaceutical mogul, one of the richest men in West Africa, owner of Oku Industries, which manufactured everything from basic medications to advanced medical equipment across 15 African countries. That is impossible, Emeka whispered. Chioma's father is a retired civil servant named Joseph. Joseph Oku is Chief Oku's younger brother. Kunle explained patiently. Chioma is Chief Oku's niece, but more importantly, she is adopted daughter and sole heir. The room started spinning around Emeka. What? Kunle pulled out a thick folder. Chief Oku never married, never had biological children. When his brother Joseph fell on hard times about 20 years ago, Chief Oku took in Joseph's daughter, Chioma, and legally adopted her. She has been his heir apparent since she was 8 years old. But she was a teacher. She lived in Surulere. She wore the same 3 dresses because she chose to, Kunle interrupted. According to my sources, Chief Oku wanted her to understand the value of hard work and humility before inheriting the empire. She was supposed to reveal her true identity and take over the company on her 30th birthday. Emeka's mouth was dry as sand. When is her 30th birthday? Kunle consulted his notes. Next month. But here is the kicker. The timeline got moved up because of what you did to her. What do you mean? When you abandoned her while she was pregnant? Chief Oku was furious. He immediately began the process of transitioning company control to her. She has been running Oku Industries for the past 6 months, though it wasn't announced publicly until last week. Kunle pulled out a newspaper clipping. The headline read, Oku Industries announces new CEO. Chioma Oku, 29, takes helm of pharmaceutical empire. The photo showed Chioma in an elegant business suit, standing in a boardroom surrounded by executives. She looked confident, powerful, completely transformed from the simple teacher Emeka had known. But her eyes held a hardness that hadn't been there before. According to Forbes, Kunle continued relentlessly. Her net worth is estimated at $3.2 billion. She is officially the richest woman in Nigeria and one of the wealthiest people in Africa. Emeka couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The numbers were too big and the reality too devastating to process. There is more, Kunle said, though his voice had gentled somewhat. She moved into the family compound in Banana Island right after the baby was born. Servants, security, the works. That little girl you abandoned, she's going to grow up as pharmaceutical royalty. The baby, Adanna Oku, that's her name. Adanna, father's daughter in Igbo, except her father isn't you anymore. Chief Oku legally adopted the child as his own granddaughter. Your parental rights were terminated by court order last month. Emeka felt like he was dying. Everything he had thrown away, everything he had lost was finally becoming clear. He hadn't just abandoned a wife and child. He had abandoned a future beyond his wildest dreams and a legacy that would have made him one of the most powerful men in Nigeria. Why didn't you tell me? He whispered. Would this have mattered? You left her for someone you thought was richer. What does that say about your character? The question hung in the air like an accusation. There is something else, Kunle said quietly. She's getting married. Emeka's head snapped up. What? Dr. Kelechi Nwankwo, Harvard-educated surgeon, comes from a good family. They met when she was in the hospital after giving birth. He helped save her life during the complications. Of course she was marrying someone worthy of her. Someone who had been there when she needed help while Emeka was sipping champagne on Victoria's yacht. The wedding is next month. It's going to be the social event of the decade. 300 guests, including heads of states. Emeka stared at the newspaper photo of Chioma. His Chioma, who was no longer his and never truly had been. She had loved him when she thought he was worthy, had been willing to share a simple life with him, had carried his child and nearly died bringing her into the world. And he had thrown it all away for a woman who kicked him out the money her money ran dry. I need to see her, he said suddenly. Bad idea, bro. I need to explain, to apologize, to what? Beg for money? Because that's what it's going to look like. But Emeka was already standing, his mind racing with desperate plans, because if he could just talk to her, explain that he had learned his lesson, that he understood now what truly mattered. Emeka, Kule called as he headed for the door. She is not the same woman you left. Money changes people. Power changes people. And what you did to her, that changed her most of all. But Emeka wasn't listening. He was already planning how to get to Chioma, how to win back what he had lost, not understanding that some things, once broken, can never be repaired. The invitation arrived at Emeka's address 3 days later, though he never figured out how they got his current location. It was thick, expensive cardstock with gold embossing, the kind of invitation that screamed wealth and importance. The pleasure of your company is requested at the wedding celebration of Dr. Kelechi Nwankwo and Miss Chioma Oku, Saturday the 15th of November at the Eco Hotel Grand Ballroom. There was a handwritten note at the bottom in Chioma's familiar script. You should see what you walked away from. See. Was it an invitation or a final twist of the knife? Emeka couldn't tell, but he knew he had to go. He spent his last money on a decent suit. Not designer, but respectable enough that he wouldn't be immediately ejected by security. As he stood outside the Eco Hotel that Saturday evening, watching Lagos elites arrive in their luxury cars and designer outfits, Emeka felt the full weight of his choices. This should have been his life. This should have been his people. That should have been his wife inside, radiant in her wedding dress, preparing to marry him instead of another man. The ballroom was transformed into something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow lights across white silk draping and enough flowers to fill a garden. A live orchestra played while guests in evening wear sipped champagne and made small talk about business deals and international travel. And there, at the center of it all was Chioma. She was breathtaking. Her wedding dress was a masterpiece of lace and silk that probably cost more than Emeka made in 5 years. Diamonds sparkled at her throat and ears. Real ones this time, not like Victoria's fakes. Her hair was styled in an elegant updo that showcased the graceful line of her neck. She glowed with happiness and confidence and power. But it was her eyes that stopped Emeka cold. When their gazes met across the crowded ballroom, there was no recognition, no softness, no trace of the woman who had once loved him unconditionally. She looked at him like he was a stranger, or worse, like he was nothing. "Excuse me," Emeka said to a waiter. "I need to speak with the bride." The waiter looked him up and down skeptically. "Are you on the guest list, sir?" Before Emeka could answer, a strong hand gripped his shoulder. He turned to find two large men in expensive suits. Private security, not hotel staff. "Mr. Okafor," one of them said politely but firmly, "Mrs. Oku would like to speak with you privately." They escorted him through the crowd to a smaller room off the main ballroom. Chioma was waiting for him, having somehow slipped away from her own wedding reception without anyone noticing. Up close, the transformation was even more dramatic. This wasn't the soft, gentle woman he had married. This was a CEO, a billionaire, a woman who commanded respect and wielded power like a weapon. "Hello, Emeka," she said calmly. "Chioma, you look incredible." "I look like myself." Finally, she studied him with cold assessment. "You look like exactly what you are." The insult landed like a physical blow, but Emeka pressed on. "I made a mistake, the biggest mistake of my life. I know that now." "Do you?" "I was young, stupid, selfish. I didn't appreciate what I had." "What you had," Chioma repeated slowly, "was a woman who loved you more than her own life. A woman who would have given you everything, including an empire, if you had just been patient." I know, and I am sorry. I am so, so sorry." "Are you sorry you left me? Or you are sorry you found out what you left?" The question hung between them like a blade. Emeka opened his mouth to lie, to claim it was about love and not money. But something in Chioma's eyes stopped him. "Both," he admitted quietly. "At least, you are honest now." She walked to the window, looking out at the Lagos skyline. "Do you want to know the real tragedy, Emeka?" He waited. "If you had stayed, if you had loved me for who I was instead of leaving me for what you thought someone else had, you would have had everything. The money, the power, the respect, the love. All of it. I can earn it back. I can prove to you that I have changed." Chioma turned back to him, and for just a moment, he saw a flash of the old hurt in her eyes before it was replaced by something harder. You can't earn back what you threw away. You can't prove yourself to someone who no longer cares about your existence. "But the baby, Adanna, she's my daughter." "No," Chioma said firmly. "She is not. Legally, biologically, in every way that matters, she belongs to this family now. You signed away your rights when you walked out to that door." "I didn't sign anything. You abandoned her." "In the eyes of the law, that is the same thing." Emeka felt desperate tears starting to fall. Please, I know I don't deserve it, but please, give me a chance to make this right. Make it right? Chioma's voice rose for the first time, letting him see the anger that had been simmering beneath her composed surface. You want to make it right? Where were you when I was bleeding out on an operating table, calling your name? Where were you when I came home to an empty apartment with a newborn baby and no money for formula? Where were you when I cried myself to sleep every night for months, wondering what I had done wrong to make you stop loving me? Each question was delivered like a hammer blow, and Emeka could only stand there and take it. You were living it up with your gold digger girlfriend, spending money on champagne while your daughter and I struggled to survive. That's who you are, Emeka. That's who you chose to be. People can change, can they? Because from what I hear, you only came looking for me after Victoria threw you out for being broke. So, forgive me if I don't believe this is about love or redemption. This is about you realizing you bet on the wrong horse. The truth of her words was devastating because it was accurate. If Victoria hadn't kicked him out, if her father hadn't cut her off, would Emeka even be here? Would he have ever thought about Chioma and the baby again? I loved you, he said desperately. I still love you. You loved the idea of me. The fantasy of a simple, devoted wife who would never challenge you or threaten your ego. But you never loved the real me because you never bothered to find out who the real me was. She moved toward the door, then paused. Do you want to know the saddest part of all this, Emeka? If you had asked me, if you had even hinted that you wanted more than a simple life, I would have told you everything. I would have shared the empire with you, made you a king. But you never asked. You just assumed I had nothing to offer you and went looking elsewhere. Chioma, please. My name is Mrs. Nwankwo now, and in about 10 minutes, I am going back to my wedding reception to dance with my husband, a man who loved me when he thought I was just a struggling single mother, who stayed by my bedside when I was sick, who proposed before he even knew about the money. She opened the door, then looked back at him one final time. Enjoy the rest of the party, Emeka. It's the closest you'll ever get to the life you could have had. And that brings us back to where we started. Emeka standing in the rain outside the Lagos Continental Hotel, staring up at the penthouse where Chioma was celebrated as one of Africa's most powerful business leaders. The invitation in his hands was for a different party, the one announcing her engagement to Dr. Nwankwo 6 months after their wedding. Even her engagement party was bigger than most people's weddings, with guest lists that read like a who is who of African politics and business. Emeka's phone buzzed again. Victoria, asking about rent money. The woman he had left his family for was now calling him daily, begging for financial help, trying to seduce him back into supporting her lifestyle. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. As security finally escorted him away from the hotel, Emeka caught one last glimpse of Chioma through those floor-to-ceiling windows. She was laughing at something her husband had said, one hand resting on her slightly rounded belly. She was pregnant again, he realized. Their second child, the sibling his daughter Adana would grow up with, in a world of privilege and possibility that he had forfeited with his choice. 2 years later, Emeka would still be struggling to rebuild his life from nothing. He eventually found work as a sales representative for a small company, earning a fraction of what he used to make. He lived alone, his reputation so damaged that even dating was nearly impossible. Women would Google his name and find the story of the man who abandoned his pregnant wife for a fake heiress. Meanwhile, Chioma's empire continued to grow. Oku Industries expanded into renewable energy, technology, and real estate development. She became a philanthropist, funded hospitals and schools across Nigeria. Her daughter, Adana, was featured in magazines as one of Africa's youngest heiresses, already being groomed to one day take over the family business. Emeka would sometimes see them in newspapers or on television, his former wife and daughter living the life of African royalty while he counted coins to buy groceries. The child he had abandoned grew up calling another man daddy, speaking 3 languages, attending the finest schools money could buy. The moral of the story isn't subtle or complex. It is as old as humanity itself. Be careful what you sacrifice in pursuit of what you think you want, because you might just discover too late that you already had everything you needed. Emeka had been married to a billionaire heiress and never knew it. He had held the keys to an empire and thrown them away for fool's gold. He had been loved unconditionally by a woman of substance and strength, and he had traded that love for the hollow affections of someone who discarded him the moment he became inconvenient. Some mistakes can be forgiven, some wounds can heal, some bridges can be rebuilt, but some choices echo through eternity, shaping not just your own destiny, but the destinies of those you claim to love. And sometimes, by the time you realize what you have lost, the person you lost it to has moved so far beyond your reach that you become nothing more than a cautionary tale they tell at dinner parties. In the end, Emeka got exactly what he chose. A life without Chioma, without his daughter, without the fortune that could have been his, without the respect he craves, and without the love he had taken for granted. Be careful what you wish for. You might just get it. And that's our story for today. If this tale of love, betrayal, and consequences resonated with you, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Raw Tales Africa, and turn on those post notifications so you never miss our latest African stories. What did you think of Emeka's choices? Do you believe people can truly change, or do our actions reveal who we really are? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let me know what other stories you would like to hear. Until next time, remember that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Sometimes, you're already standing in paradise and just too blind to see it. This is Raw Tales Africa, and I'll see you in the next one.